point or not. I've been reaching out to some more people just to see where people are at, specifically after NLP trainings. And more people are saying something like this would be useful for them. So we'll see.
Have you spoken to Anya in the past week?
I don't believe so.
Oh, I was just hoping she'd join. She adds a lot.
I think she will, and I think the only thing for her is the Sunday time where she gets a lot going on. I know that she's doing a whole jewelry sale at the moment, so
Okay.
She's probably pretty busy with that, and that's what's consuming her. But she's definitely interested in this, and she's the one that's kind of set me up with a bunch more people and just saying, okay, have a conversation and see if this would be useful for you doing these trainings.
Cool.
So at least like 4 other people she's introduced me to, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we've had conversations, and most of the time they're pretty good with their skills, but they're just not on the level of, okay, I'm done with practitioner training, I'm ready to see clients kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard about or observed any continuing change in her since your session with her?
Since last time we talked about it, I haven't really heard anything more on that. And she's posting more on Facebook, but that's all I can really say. Maybe expressing herself more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll get into it. We're going to do IQs today. And why this kind of came up is because I was working this week, and I had one woman that I was working with. And I was just kind of observing IQs, and I ended up teaching her about them just because it was kind of interesting. But more than anything, what was happening is I was asking her what she wanted. And naturally, as most people that I talk to, and she didn't know what she wanted. And so I asked her what she didn't want. And of course, she was a little bit stuck on that. But we worked a little bit more through that. I saw you flinch there a little bit, Stephen.
Well, I just think it's odd that she doesn't know what she does want and she doesn't know what she does not want.
Usually you'll have one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, that's weird.
Usually everybody knows what they don't want.
Right.
Exactly. And so I'd call it 95% that you'll have where they at least have one, and maybe put it into like 80-90% where they at least they know what they don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So we got into that, and I loosened her hold on that a little bit and got her more towards thinking of what she did wanted. And I was like, okay, well, just imagine your life. What would it be like if you had what you wanted? And so she kept looking up into the right. No, I'm sorry, up into the left.
Her left or to your left?
Up into her left.
Okay.
And so, quick question for you. Why might that be a problem?
Because she's making it up.
Up into her left.
Yeah, so she's been.
So it looks like to the right
okay.
to you, and that's remembered or reconstructed, as you put.
So it's visually reconstructed.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying she doesn't have like a vision for the future. She's just essentially saying she wants things that she's had in the past. She
Exactly.
can't go beyond what she knows, it sounds like.
Exactly. And so if you have that case and situation where you see that, then you can notice that she's bringing up things from the past, maybe things that other people have, which might be beneficial. Yeah. But more than anything, what you wanted to get her to do is start imagining.
Right.
And what
looking
happened,
up to the right, correct?
Exactly.
So visually create.
And what you might do that is, no, up here. And so that's one of my favorite ones that I saw from Leslie Cameron Bandler. She would just point. No, I want you to look up here. And that's the simple physical way that you can really get them in doing it, and actually works really well.
Really? So you actually have them, you actually say, look up there?
Yeah.
Think about it and look up there? Fascinating. That's cool.
The same thing if you have a missing emotion. And so oftentimes what they'll have is a repressed emotion, and they'll look around for it. They'll talk to themselves about it, but they won't be able to feel it. And so it's like, okay, I want you to lean over to the right, and now I want you to look down to the right.
Huh, cool.
Yeah.
And so then they get a feeling state from there.
Sean, can I do a quick experiment with you?
Sure.
Okay. I want you to look up and to your right. That should look like to us up and to the left.
I tried this out too. Yeah.
Okay. That
It
was your
matches,
right?
Up into my right.
That's your right?
Up into my right. Yeah.
I did it with Barb earlier and it didn't work.
As far as going on the video.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is right. Appears right
That's
on
your
your
right.
video, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's our
No,
okay.
it appears left. Well, facing
As
me,
it should, yeah.
to your left. I'm looking at you, and you're looking up to your right, to my left.
Yeah.
Which is
As it should be.
Right.
right.
Just as if
Visually
we're
clear.
talking about real life.
Okay, it
person.
works.
Wouldn't it be awful if it was backwards?
Yeah, that
Well,
was screwing up.
I tested this with Barb on FaceTime and it was backwards.
Oh, shoot.
I wonder if there's different software or something that corrects for that.
That would confuse the hell out of me.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
But
That's a good
it's
point, though. If we're working
working on
with somebody, we should probably ask them, do me a favor real quick, raise your right hand so that I know which side, because
Yeah.
that would mess things up.
And with the IQs, what will commonly happen, and I always get this with the new practitioners that I talk with, they want to know if you're right or left-handed. And it can help. And it could be something that you add into your sheet of your intake questionnaire. But I just haven't seen it enough where there's left-handed people or there's people with the opposite. It just about always is up and to the right for visual, up and to the right for visual imagined, up and to the left for visual reconstructed. And I just haven't seen it where it's the opposite. And they'll say that in the books. They'll say that in some of the trainings, where if you have a left-handed person, it's going to be the opposite. And I just don't see it enough to actually put time on it. To go and ask somebody, are you left or right-handed? Oh, okay, well, this is backwards. This is forwards. Maybe it's just that everybody that I talk to is right-handed, or I don't know. But more than anything, I haven't seen it where it's reversed.
Okay.
Jude, have you seen that? I know the trainings they mention that, don't they?
Yeah, but I haven't seen it, and I haven't noticed that it ever makes a difference with anybody that I've talked to.
Yeah.
Left or right-handed.
I don't think I have a big enough end to be able to comment on that.
Okay. And the first level of these is basically just understanding visuals up. A first level distinction is, okay, I know that visuals up, I know that down is going to be maybe kinesthetic, maybe talking to yourself, and I know sideways is going to be auditory. And then we're able to go from there. And then you get to a finer level of distinction where you have it, and you know that they're going up and the right. Okay, they're imagining something. Okay, they're going up to the left. They are remembering an image. And so then it comes to the case where you get to even finer level distinctions where you see patterns, where you see them going up in the right, down to the left, down to the right, up into the left, and you kind of get distinctions for that. Part of what I was learning this week is that at every level there's going to be finer distinctions, and the level of skill that you have is the ability to make even more distinctions. So I had an interesting situation actually last night where we got hot soup, really hot soup. And for me, it was so hot I couldn't even hold it with the bowl. But the person that I was having the meal with, she could go ahead and she could hold on to the bowl, the cup, and didn't have a problem with it. Her heat index was that much more able to withstand that kind of temperature compared to mine, which was fascinating to me. And what's interesting is that benefits her. Her being able to do that benefits her in this climate. Whereas me, I've never had the ability or the benefit to actually have that incorporated in my life. But the same is going to be true for your sensory acuity as well, where you're going to be maybe more good at doing visual, maybe you're going to be better at doing kinesthetic. It's all for a purpose. And then the finer distinction that you can get, the more able that you're going to be able to notice the distinctions in others, but also yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I kind of went a long way around that, but the real skill in it is knowing the differences. Knowing the difference of, okay, it's up and to the right versus up and to the left versus down to the right, down to the left. At one level, it's going to be just a distinction between down and up. At another level, it's going to be a distinction between down, up, and to the right.
Mm-hmm. And then at the next level is remembering what that means. And then the next level is being able to incorporate that into what you're interacting with them, what you're doing when you interact. I still struggle with that a lot.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of everything that's going on, and keeping track of eyes, keeping track of changes in face and texture, sweating or color changes or swallowing or tics. Those are easier.
Especially when you jump right into it and you're like, okay, now I'm on a session with somebody and it's not somebody I've really spent a lot of time with. You got to deal with the content that they're throwing at you, their presence, what they're doing with their eyes, building rapport with them, and then going to a place where you have rapport and you can lead them. Mm-hmm. Which was why I was glad that we did mapping last week. I think that was super beneficial for our purposes. There was one thing I wanted to add to that, but I forget exactly what it was. But that's sidetracking me anyhow.
Okay.
So now that we do have the video and everything, I think it's going to be beneficial for us to go ahead and look at it so we can see the differences in these eye patterns and we can kind of just practice with it. Mm-hmm. So what I want to do is I want to break this off into practice. And so we'll kind of switch this around a little bit. But what we'll do is we'll have Jude go first, and I want him to ask Valerie some questions. And I want you to kind of elicit and just get her to go in and search for the information. So get her to look up, or get her to look visually reconstructed, get her to look visually imagined, and just kind of go all over the place so we can kind of just notice her eyes. And I'll put her on feature. And it might be beneficial for us to get closer, yeah.
Get real.
So we'll go ahead and spotlight your video. And Jude, whenever you're ready.
Okay. What do we want to talk about, Valerie?
Whatever's on your mind, Jude.
Well, you're answering the questions, so is there anything that you need to work on?
Am I answering them out loud or only in my head?
Sean?
You can do either, and there's nothing necessarily that we have to go and work on. It could be as simple as Jude, you just asking her questions about where she grew up, where she imagined her life going, what was the color of your house when you were 5, those kind of things. Anything that elicits the information that'll take her somewhere with her eyes. And if you want to answer the questions, you definitely can. I think it would probably be beneficial for you to answer the questions.
Okay.
All right, so we'll keep them general. So how was your Thanksgiving, Valerie?
It was really fun. Yeah.
It was really fun?
It was. I had 4 days off in a row, and I made Thanksgiving dinner twice throughout the weekend because we decided that the first turkey we didn't have enough leftovers. So that was kind of fun.
Wow. So are there any types of traditions that you guys follow for Thanksgiving?
I mean, growing up, Thanksgiving had a lot of traditions to it, but not ones that we necessarily have kept in place. It was like the big gathering for my father's side of the family, and he had 7 siblings, and I had 20. I have like 20 over 20 first cousins on that side because they're like real breeders. And
wow,
no, it's true. Like we used to like go, like we'd get up into teams and we'd play these like cutthroat games of Risk and stuff. So we kind of went on like a Monopoly bender, which was fun, except it was like Star Wars Monopoly. So that was kind of weird, but my son loved it.
So your gatherings were massive.
Massive. And that's why we didn't do Christmas together on that side, is because this was kind of like a safe holiday for everyone to get together, because by the time Christmas rolled around, there was always like you and then the spouse, and like it was just too scattered all over the place. So
okay. Oh, that's cool. Interesting. So Do you want more, Sean?
Yeah, go specifically into a specific modality that you want to elicit.
A specific modality?
You want her eyes to go in this direction. Ask the question that'll make him go in that direction.
Okay. So what's it now? Did you say you got a little one? Is that a little child or is that a little pet?
You can't say both.
I don't know. You just never know. I mean, people say a little one. Some people's pets are their little ones. So I have little children. My little ones are children.
I have one son, and he actually just turned 8 a couple days ago.
Awesome. So what's it feel like now to share, Thanksgiving and some of those traditions with him, or start your own?
I don't know. I mean, his cousins live in England, so he's not going to have these like massive, extended gatherings once a year. That's just really unlikely. So I don't know what it's like to do that. I mean, before we moved here, we lived near my in-laws, and so we had some things going on there tradition-wise, but I would say since then, life has changed so much.
Pause it there. Do you guys all agree that she doesn't know how to feel that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why do we know that for sure?
Her eyes never went kinesthetic.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get to, is kinesthetic. And what happens. Yeah.
Where did they go?
A little bit of auditory digital, and some visual. Yeah.
Visual reconstructed.
Uh-huh. And it was interesting. What I noticed is when she went to go talk about the family who were abroad, she imagined them. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
She went straight up to the right and up to imagine them, and then she went and remembered some other image. She's very good visually. Would you guys all agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mostly she uses that visual. I'll let you keep going, Jude, but I just want to point that out.
Yeah, I've never actually met most of that family.
But you can imagine what they look like or where they look like.
I've seen pictures. That's it.
Did you guys see that too?
Yeah.
Very good at doing that.
Yeah. No, and actually what I was asking Valerie was like, what's it feel like as a mother now? Because I know that for me, it's different in the traditions and some of the stuff. It's just, it's a different feel.
I don't know. I mean, as a solo parent, I have all of this influence. I actually don't like all the influence that I have. And I don't know how intentional I've been in trying to grow the concept of holiday traditions. And I think part of it is because in the last 6 years, my holidays have been kind of this whole variety of experiences, not always in the same place, not always the same meal.
What emotion is Valerie good at feeling, guys? Valerie, what's influence feel like for you?
Power, it's uncomfortable.
No, and get into the feeling. What's uncomfortable like? Or influence? There you go.
I don't know how to put words to it. Like I'm flying solo a little bit.
Okay. I was just testing. That seems interesting to me because Jude finally got you to a feeling, and the word that you called it was influence.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first time we got you to go down to the right. We also got you to talk to yourself there. What were you saying? Talking about family traditions, do you remember? And just how things are different now than they used to be?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Notice that there's 2 levels to all this. And you can go in, you can ask good questions to find the second level of it. where she has her experience on the inside, where she's feeling, where she's talking to herself, and then we have the experience on the outside where we're observing it as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You'd keep going. I want to see if we can get her to do auditory. I know, and just get them to be specific. And you did a better job on that one, getting her to finally go kinesthetic too.
Okay. Well, I know after Thanksgiving, I kind of had this cutoff that, I can't start Christmas carols until Thanksgiving's over. Although I may have cheated on that by hours this year, maybe a little bit. But so what are some of your favorite Christmas carols?
Ooh, so I grew up singing in children's choirs, like really prestigious ones.
Cool.
And so I have all of these like old German Christmas carols that I used to be able to sing. I don't know that I could sing them now. So I love those. And I grew up singing like Benjamin Britten and
Cool.
like Handel's Messiah and all this really awesome stuff. And it brought me a lot of joy growing up. So carols, I mean, Christmas is fun. I love King Wenceslas, and I like O Tannenbaum and some of the other older ones.
Cool. That's cool. So you talk about influence. I've got my daughters in the other room. They're watching Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire in Holiday Inn right now.
One of my favorites.
I'm indoctrinating them into some of the holiday stuff, and White Christmas came on. They're like, is that where that song came from? I'm like, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Cool.
I remember one year I got to do the bells for Jingle Bells. I got to be the one to ring them in the choir, and that was like a big deal, and my friends were jealous. It's good.
Yeah, that's fun watching the kids watching the kids choirs and their performances. It just brings you back to the excitement of showing back up to school after hours and it's dark. So
I was a mezzo-soprano, so I always got to hold the middle note. So I always felt like I was in the thick of it in the choir, because I wasn't carrying the melody and I wasn't carrying the counterpoint, but I always had the hard part, to kind of carry it out. And those were good days.
That's fantastic. You have to give my daughter some tips. She's very into choir and singing and theater and music, and so she's just fanatical. Her dream this week is to be on Broadway and to act and to sing.
To be a triple threat.
Yeah.
That's what we always looked up to, was the triple threat. I didn't have enough dance, I think, in me to pursue that hard. Well, you got to really love it to make that work, but
no doubt. Well,
so I guess it's in the family, because my cousin, when he was big into theater and big into musical theater, and when he got married, I didn't go, but this is what they did for their wedding. They staged a musical about how he and his wife met. That was the wedding.
Wow.
Whole stage production that they did with their friends, and it featured them and when they met, and then it culminated in their actual ceremony. And I was like,
holy crap.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Creative.
Very interesting.
Pause it there. What else do we know about Valerie through her eye movements there? Thanks for getting so into it for us.
One of the things that I saw that I thought was interesting is it seems like it's really hard for you to go kinesthetic, Valerie, because even when you were talking about the things that you liked, as you were saying, I really liked this, your eyes were going visual.
Well, I did get some auditory from you this time with the Christmas. I mean, a lot of auditory.
Absolutely.
you know,
Right,
to
talking about the notes and the bells and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also, I mean, I could just see in your face a change in your expression when you started talking about it. So it's obviously something that's got great feeling behind it.
What else could that be?
The change in her expression and her physiology.
Yeah, you notice a change, right? I believe we can all say that.
I noticed a change around the music, but also around talking about the holiday and Christmas.
Okay.
And Thanksgiving seemed like kind of like, yeah, it's Thanksgiving, but Christmas really kind of seemed like a lighting up. And
Valerie, if you could go in your feelings, would you say there's a noticeable difference in how you felt before and then how you felt after when talking about some of those things?
Yes, but it was more about the music than the actual holiday.
Okay. What happens when you really go into the feelings of it and go into that holiday?
So the music was a solace to me during that holiday. The music was the bright point and the thing that was probably the best part of Christmas, and the rest of it, I'd be fine if I could forget all about it.
It's interesting because we have a lot of blockage, it appears, there going over a kinesthetic feeling there, but there's still emotions coming out. What is it?
I said, I don't doubt it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So yeah, to your point, we do notice a difference kinesthetically. However, we don't notice how big of a difference is because I believe that there's block there. She's not going all the way in that kinesthetic feeling as much as she could. And then what we also notice, and part of why I think this could be such a big change, is what happens when you guys haven't had maybe a meal that you like really in a long time. And this will be aside from the content.
What happens when you have a meal that you haven't had for a long time that you really enjoy?
And then you have it maybe once a year or such like that. How much do you enjoy it in that one time a year?
A lot. I do.
So we can, in a sense, compare this also to synesthesia, where if she's really good visually, and we go and put her over to an auditory or a kinesthetic feeling, if it's something that she hasn't experienced in a while, it's different and it's hypnotic in nature for her or for anybody. So in this context, it's not really synesthesia, but it's her accessing a modality that she doesn't necessarily access as much as she could. And her getting really deep into that modality brings about a hypnotic experience. So for example, if I'm able to talk with Jude and say Jude's a really visual person and I get him to go kinesthetic, well, that's a different experience for him. He's going to enjoy that experience if he's able to really go deep into that. If he's not able to go deep into that, he's not going to be able to enjoy that. But having that difference of experience where he's always going visually, and then he goes kinesthetic, then that's a difference of experience. That's the hypnotic effect that I'm kind of alluding to here.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm so terrible at auditory, but if I get into something where I can go deeper in auditory and I understand it and it makes sense to me, then it's more impactful. So I'll give you a specific example. If maybe you're on like a date, or maybe you're on a meeting with a business partner, and say you're getting rapport really well, and you get rapport with them, and then you start pacing and leading, and say that you're pacing their key modality. Maybe it's visual, maybe it's auditory or whatever. And then you lead into your modality, your favorite one, and then you start using your modality. Then they're going to be more drawn to you as long as they're in that modality and you're leading effectively in that way.
And what's that called? What did you call that?
I think
synesthesia is a process that helps understand it. Yeah.
I'll write that down.
And all that is just a crossing over of senses.
What does red feel like, for example?
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
I remember that.
Yeah. Does that make sense? What do you got, Stephen?
I was just going to ask you a question about the example you just gave, a business meeting or whatever, talking to somebody. You're operating in their primary modality, and then you cross over into yours. And if you're doing a good job, you're going to be, can't remember the exact words you said, but connecting with them better. My question was, if you can operate really well in their primary modality, why would you want to try to bring them over into yours?
Which one do you think you're more skillful in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's a good point. But if you assume that you're more skilled in any of those than the other person because you know NLP, seems like you would still be better operating in their modality than trying to get them to operate in yours.
I think of it kind of like you're going and playing home field advantage. Like, would I rather go and play a football game in Florida when I'm from Denver? Or would I rather play in front of my own fans in Denver where I'm a little bit more comfortable and I don't have to drive so far and I don't have to extend the effort to go to that place?
Okay.
If we put it back in NLP terms, while I want to be as skillful visually as this other person, and maybe I am, I'm most, at least for me, I'm more skilled kinesthetically, and I'm just going to revert to that by default because I've had just a history of practice with that, innumerable compared to my visual. While I can go in and make the effort and do it visually, naturally, I'm just going to revert back to the kinesthetics. You have something too, Jude?
Well, I was just going to say, if you get really good and you're masterful at it, you'll be able to convey it in their modality.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be, you got to be masterful at it.
Well, and a form of practice might be to keep going visually when you're a kinesthetic person. You know, keep it kinesthetic, even though that you have the draw to go back to kinesthetic. The way that the mind works, though, is it's always drawn to using less effort.
Yeah.
If you can go to the grocery store without having to bring a list and you memorize everything that you need, then the mind will tend to do that. It'll make habits out of things. Specifically where you have 5 different products to choose from, say it's hot dogs, say it's bacon, you'll know, and what your mind will be drawn to do is to know which brand is where, and then it'll choose it automatically. It's more drawn to going on autopilot.
So theoretically, you could change it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You could change what your autopilot is. You can change what you're best at. Is that what you're saying?
You can change any part of this, yeah.
Practice, I assume, is the key there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as if you went to the grocery store and you started picking out something different. It would take more effort, but eventually you'd get skillful at it, and then it wouldn't take any effort. Say, for example, you used to buy everything that was a bargain brand, and now you go buy everything that's name brand. At first, it's going to take a little bit of effort, but after a while, you're just going to know name brand.
Okay.
In the modalities, it's going to take a little bit of effort. It's going to take practice, but ultimately you could change it. There's another way I was going to relate that, but I forget.
It's making sense to me now, what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, and just on the skillful part is that, yeah, I'd want to be as skillful in my communication as possible, while the natural tendency is going to be to lull or to make less energy. I'd say use that to your advantage. So, for example, you're in a business meeting with somebody, you pace their modality, you lead them to yours, they're going to be lulled into it. If you have a greater presence, then you can use your skill in it while they're kind of mentally asleep comparatively.
Okay. If you say it works, I'll believe that.
No, we don't want that.
Test it, Steve. Test it.
Test it, yeah.
I need a lot more skill to be able to do that, I think.
So, for example,
you have Barb there all the time. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
We
You
need
got
to
the
practice
opportunity
more.
to much practice.
Yeah.
Speaking of Barb, let's use you next, and I'll ask some questions for you. Would you mind getting a little closer for us so we can see your eyes a little bit better? We might have to bump Steven out for a little while.
Yeah, we'll just bump him out.
As long as I can hear.
And we'll feature you too. Spotlight. Okay, cool. Okay. So Barb, what I first want to ask you is, what was the color of your first car?
Red.
Okay. Was it like a shiny red? Was it a dim red, burgundy?
Kind of like a medium red.
Okay. And can you imagine your car now being bright purple?
Yeah, okay. It took me a bit to get there, but okay.
Perfect. Okay. And what was the color of your first house?
First house I owned?
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. I don't remember.
Okay. Let's say your last house, the house before the one you're living in now.
Oh, that one was gray.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know what it's like to feel wet socks?
Yeah.
Can you feel it now?
Oh yeah. It helps that my feet are in my slippers and they're kind of sweaty right now, so that helps.
Okay. Okay. Pause it right there. What I wanted you guys to notice is the distinction between her two visuals. Before I went to the kinesthetic, did you guys notice how she accessed her different places for information?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you notice specifically? It might be a little bit different from what we saw in Valerie's.
I saw her when she was trying to, what was it? She was more straight up. And it almost seemed to me like when she was trying to imagine what her car looked like purple, she was on her left, which would be our right, which is the reconstructed, I thought I saw.
Yeah. And I made sure to test it just to see. I wanted to go and counter, see which ones were imagined or see which one was reconstructed. And we could see the distinction there. What was interesting is, and the difference I would say between Valerie and her was that Valerie was more like, and Barb was more like, and it was just a subtle difference, this smaller movement. And,
if I can just, when you were asking me if I could imagine my car purple, as I was trying, I seriously, I couldn't picture it. And then also I went, oh, maybe if I go over to my right and up, I could picture it. And once my eyes went there, I got it.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
So I was
good.
just like, well, if I go vision imagine, I could probably see it purple. And that's when I could see it purple.
Okay.
Very clever. Very good. It's like you're learning or something.
I know.
Can you imagine playing the Star Spangled Banner or saying the Pledge of Allegiance? How's it go? How's the Pledge of Allegiance go?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And it's been so long since I said this. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
With liberty and justice.
With liberty and justice for all. I was like, liberty's in there somewhere, but I don't know. I couldn't bring it.
Is she reverse oriented, Sean?
Oh, that was visually remembered.
I don't believe so.
I
You gotta remember I'm probably backwards because we're facing. No,
maybe that's. I saw her eyes going when she was remembering the Pledge of Allegiance. Me looking at our screen, her eyes are going up and to my left.
Uh-huh.
Is that?
Yeah,
that's constructed, not remembered.
No, that's right.
No, to my left.
Yeah, I think.
Which is my left.
If you're looking on your screen, it's going to be the same as what she's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you gotta remember.
She was.
You're not looking. You're not facing here. Your screen is exactly as like you guys are sitting there.
And that's why it seemed backwards when we were doing FaceTime. So if you sat across the table from me right now, and we're looking.
Because right now I'm holding up my right hand in my screen, and it's on
the left side.
And here's my, this is my left, here's my right.
Yeah, and mine is on the right hand of my screen, and it should be on the left-hand side of your screen.
So when your eyes are going up and to the left, to me, okay, so what I'm seeing is different than what everybody else is seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Because it's your own screen.
Okay, that explains that, I guess.
No, I'm pretty sure it should be the same. This to me is up into my right, and then on my screen up into my right.
Yeah.
Right? This is up into your guys' right.
Bob.
Yeah.
Up into my right?
Yeah.
That's up into your right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But on your screen, it's gonna.
Yep, it is. It's different. It's opposite.
It's gonna look.
My own screen is different than the way I see everybody else.
Exactly.
So that's why I was looking at Barb's eyes and asking you if she was reverse engineered there.
So you guys are seeing this on the left side of your screen.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, so it is like we're having a conference.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're having coffee meeting, and okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
so
for everybody else, but it's for the way I see my own screen, Barb, it's opposite of what it should be.
Gotcha. So she was just basically remembering what the Pledge of Allegiance looked like somehow. Do you remember the picture?
I was trying to remember I was trying to actually reconstruct the words in my head.
So you saw the words?
To see the words, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would it be like if you just said it?
If I just said the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah.
I probably would have stumbled even worse than I already did.
Okay. Can you imagine yourself doing it?
Yeah, now I can, because I was just doing it.
Okay. It's just a little bit of movement down to that left. What about the last time that you felt really cold? Do you remember that?
The last time I felt really cold?
Yeah.
30 seconds ago.
Half an hour ago.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Can you go more into that feeling?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty easy. I'm cold.
What happens if you go down this way?
I go down kinesthetic?
Yeah. What happens when you do that?
Yeah, I actually feel cold.
Did you guys notice her breathing in that? Her breathing changed a little bit in that. She 10-step right in here. Yeah, interesting. So let's see. Can you imagine that cold feeling again? And can you imagine it getting hotter now?
Yeah.
Okay. When you imagined it, did you have a color to it?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. What did it look like?
It didn't really have a look. It was just the feeling.
Okay.
Just kind of feeling heat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure because what I noticed is you went kinesthetically and then you imagined something. And maybe it was just for a quick moment you tried to, and then you went back kinesthetically. So what I was just wondering is if you had a strategy for heating yourself up by imagining something.
Well, that's a great idea. I should come up with a strategy for heating myself up. Yeah. And cooling myself off. Yeah.
Yeah. Try going back into the cold feeling again.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
And then go ahead and see if you can heat yourself back up.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you do it?
It was just, I just felt it, the warmth all like in my chest area. First I felt like getting to the cold was very easy because I'm so cold, and that's where I feel it, like that cold. And I did picture myself like outside in the snow, bundled up.
Okay.
And then when I went to warm myself up, again, I just felt the heat. But what really helped is then I visualized myself in what are those?
Sauna,
It's not a sauna.
hot tub.
A hot tub. Thank you. Like a hot tub.
Okay.
And really the heat.
Did you have to force your eyes to go kinesthetic? Because you went visual
did.
first. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why do you think she went visual first, Stephen?
That's how she remembers things, primarily visually. But then she realized she wasn't getting to the feeling. And you know what you said at the beginning of this session.
Mm-hmm.
So she forced her eyes to go kinesthetic, and that's when she got the feeling of it.
Jude, why do you think she first went visual?
I think that's her primary modality.
Yeah, it's her lead system.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
She's most comfortable with it. And so if we're looking at see what her strategies are, it's going to be tough for us to elicit a strategy without having the visual lead get in the way. And so if we first got out of practitioner training, we're talking to Barb, we notice that every time she starts a strategy, she's going to go visual. Well, the strategy isn't really visual, but it helps her get to the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes
Which
sense.
which could help us lead her by taking it from that and then crossing it over.
It can. I wouldn't necessarily incorporate the visual part into her strategy because I think she's going to do that on her own. So say we just learned Barb's strategy for being warm.
Mm-hmm.
What we saw is essentially she went down to the right, but before that she went up.
Right.
So the strategy could be seen as up and then down. But if we're going to try to get her to duplicate that strategy again, she's naturally probably going to go up and down all on her own. Now, the strategy is just in the kinesthetic, but for her, it's also going to be in the visual just because it's a leads strategy or a lead system. So, Barb, for you, can you imagine maybe a purple gecko in the room? Can you see it?
Yeah.
There you go. And can you imagine it laugh?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I want you to imagine it talking to you and just making friendly conversation with you.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what I want you to do is imagine Stephen having Valerie's voice.
I can imagine Valerie's voice, but I'm having a hard time putting it in Stephen.
Okay.
I'm trying to put his face and her voice together.
Okay. Can you remember her voice?
Yes.
Okay. And just what I want you to do is just imagine her talking to you right now.
Okay.
You have it?
Got it.
Okay. Now what I want you to do is watch her lips move as she talks to you.
Okay.
And you can hear her talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What exactly is the tone of her voice?
Jovial.
And talking fast, talking slow.
About normal pace.
Okay. And you can see her lips moving.
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to zoom in really close to her lips moving and listening to her speak to you in that jovial tone. And then what I want you to do is as you zoom out on that, you'll start to see Stephen's face talking in that same tone. And just take it ever so slowly where you start to see Stephen's lips, Stephen's chin, Stephen's nose talking to you in that tone.
Facial hair.
Okay.
Okay. And then you have it now.
Yep.
And zoom out a little bit more and see Stephen's whole body and just talking to you in Valerie's voice.
Okay.
You have it?
I have it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, what did we all notice in that, everyone? What did you guys notice?
Well, she was totally and visually constructed the entire time, or visually created the entire time.
for the most part, she'd make little flashes, little dashes every once in a while, wouldn't you? Just every once in a while, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for the most part, I would say it's heavily visual created, right?
Mm-hmm.
What else did you guys notice?
Even when she was creating the sound, it was all visual.
Yeah, it would come down a little bit to auditory, but mostly stayed up and visually created.
Okay. What do we know about Barb now?
She's visual.
Very visual, right? What do we know about her other modalities?
I think she can access all of them, or at least didn't seem to be any blocks in finding a little bit of auditory. I would say maybe auditory is probably the least, but you're able to get kinesthetic, visual, a little bit auditory.
Stephen, what do you notice about her other modalities?
One thing I'm surprised at is that she's so visual that she goes there first. I mean, I knew that she was more visual. She used to at least think that she was primarily kinesthetic.
Hmm.
And I think I've told you a couple times that I thought you were more visual than you realized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're seeing that tonight. But I was surprised that she didn't use a whole system where she'd go visual to see an image and then maybe hear it and then check the feeling of it, or, you know, something like that, some sort of multi-part system.
You were surprised it was so much visual.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. What else in the sense of her being able to access all of that visual reconstructed? So if we go back and we ask Barb, I mean, well, imagine again your first car.
Okay.
And if we see that, what we notice is maybe just up into the left a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
If she goes and imagines that. Where the difference in what I'm seeing is, what if she was able to go really up into the left? And so what do you guys think's going on there?
So
And this is a little bit of a challenge.
Are you pointing out that when she goes visually reconstructed, that she's not going very far to the left? It's just kind of up and ticks a little bit to the left. And when she goes visually created, she's pretty solidly up and to the right.
Yeah, that's what I'm alluding to. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, difficulty in accessing memories, but very able and capable of creating and looking and imagining things.
So Barb, would you say that's true, that you're really good at imagining things?
Creative.
I never thought of myself that way.
Okay. But you could imagine the purple gecko after just a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But like when you asked me what the color of my first car was, it just was right there for me. So I didn't really have to go look for it. It was just there. But like when you were asking me the color of the first house I owned, I don't remember what my eyes were doing, but I couldn't even bring it. I couldn't even remember what it was.
They were visual searching like all over the place.
Okay.
Okay. What's the color of your parents' house?
The one I grew up in?
Sure.
It was blue.
Okay.
And then pink. And blue again.
Okay.
That's understandable.
What we notice is that she's not having to go far for the information. But what I wonder is why it doesn't go further there. And so, I don't know, my interpretation, and this is just kind of take it for what you will. I don't know that it's true or not. But it's that she doesn't have to use much effort to go there. But maybe the range is diminished by not being able to go all the way there. I'm not necessarily sure. I know that for me, if you ask me a question, I'll go and search for it. I'll even lean my head back sometimes and do that. And what that signals is a lot of effort.
Could it be that it's just not the depth of the questions just aren't, I mean, okay, your car, color, a house, but if we're looking at more something that's deeper that she needs to access, maybe that's
something that she really has to search for.
right.
Do you remember what clothes you wore on the first day of kindergarten?
Yeah, I think you were just, that's so funny. I'm sitting here just going, what could you guys ask me to make me really
Actually, can you remember what Steve was wearing on your guys' first date?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
There. Much deeper.
Yeah, that's better.
remember he had jeans on. I can tell you that much.
Okay.
I doubt it.
Uh-huh.
We were hiking.
Oh, I was thinking the first time we met.
Oh, well, that's different than first date. But yeah.
I heard first time we met. That's why I went there.
It was 4th of July. I doubt I was wearing jeans on the 4th of July.
Okay. That was a good distinction, dude. Now we can see that if she has to go deeper, she can.
Yeah.
What would happen?
So what does that mean, Sean, though, that she's able to pull the memories so quickly of stuff that's not as deep?
I think it's just that she has skill in doing that. That she's codified everything visual enough that it's so quick to her awareness.
Well, maybe because she's got her primary modality is visual, so that she's able to pull those memories almost instantaneously without having to search for them.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And perhaps if we're asking more auditory or kinesthetic, she'd be maybe having to look at the other submodalities a little bit harder and deeper.
Well, she'd first try to look at visual,
right?
Is what we saw, but she would have to look there deeper. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a slightly different theory, but I think I can't remember if this has already been said or not. But I think it has to do with the level of detail, because visually, the color of something is very like surface, and it's right there. But when she had to describe clothing, it was very different.
Deeper question.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I don't think I'm saying anything that's all that different than what we've already been saying. But I just wonder, like, if we asked her what the door knocker looked like on her parents, on the home that she grew up in, I wonder if she'd have to go further in.
And what I was looking at when I saw it, and kind of what Jude explained it to me as well, is that with such a well-developed visual system, and the other systems not being so comparatively developed, that's the kind of point of emphasis that I want to make as well. Where she's so good visually, comparatively, auditory and kinesthetic, not so much. And so having her go and find a question that doesn't take a whole lot, such as the color of her car, it's easy. She has quick access to it, but having her go to a different modality is going to be quite a bit challenging. And that therein is because she's so good visually. So that's just added proof that the visual system is such a competency for her. How could she go and develop her other systems?
Wait, practice?
She could experience something that is very routine and everyday and try to store it in a different modality. So like whatever the morning routine is between waking up and leaving the house, she could try to feel that routine or try to listen to that routine. Something that's familiar.
Okay. What else? What's another representation of the system that we haven't mentioned?
Auditory digital.
Those, yeah. She's a little bit weak in that as well, too, wouldn't you agree? Comparative to her visual.
Comparatively, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't really see any auditory digital.
The
Yeah.
gustatory or whatever.
Gustatory, yeah.
Gustatory.
Smell some sights and sounds.
What does your morning taste like?
Bacon.
Again.
Mm.
I remember that. I might just come back to America just so I can experience a bacon morning with you guys.
You're welcome anytime.
Jude, they cook like bacon every single morning, I believe it is, isn't it?
Pretty much.
And,
Yeah.
and you say that like it's wrong, Sean?
Exactly.
No, that's the reason I want to come back to America.
No kidding.
The representation system that I was alluding to is language. So, for example, if she went through her day, she went through her experience only using auditory words or only using kinesthetic words, that would be a completely different experience for her and a way for her to get better at those as well.
So you're saying she could describe her morning routine in pictures, or she could describe it in words, or she could describe it in feelings. And that would be a way to practice, basically,
Yeah,
those other modalities.
exactly. So one of the exercises that I did was just writing everything in a auditory way, writing everything in a kinesthetic way, writing everything. And so this is expanding your word choice, one, and then maybe just writing a story. And so for my practice, what I do is 10 minutes every morning is I'd write like a whole page of different words. And I was seeing this experience and it was absolutely illuminating to me the light that I was going after. And then once I had that, it felt so great. The sensation was awe-inspiring and it warmed me up inside. From there, I had this sound and it kept buzzing in my ear. How great it was to be alive. I could hear it resonating throughout my being. And so I would do that every morning for about 10 minutes. And you just switch modalities and you get really good at, one, choosing different words, and then also advancing your ability to see or feel or hear the world in different ways.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so I like that idea.
And you can mix them up. You can do them all at the same time. You can do them all at different times. Sometimes it's just you do all auditory. Sometimes it's just you do all visual. But that's an experience that definitely helps a lot. What would you do if you had her as a client and you believe that it was necessary for her to get into a different modality than just visual?
Can I ask first why you would think it was necessary for someone to get into a different modality?
That was my next question.
Like if for some reason it was important for me to unblock the feeling of Christmas, for whatever reason, then that would be a use case for forcing me into a different modality.
So a potential block, right, Valerie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why else would it be useful to get into another modality? Or would you, as a coach, suggest somebody else to get into a modality?
I guess if someone's stuck, maybe you need to get them unstuck.
Okay.
If establishing rapport or working with somebody else kind of necessitated being fluent in a different modality, like if I was having conflict with a coworker and somehow being in their modality would help.
Okay.
Sean, would you say that if somebody is very, I don't want to see inept because it has nothing to do with it. Well, it just isn't very strong in one of them, that's potentially an area to look at for where there might be a block?
A block or a problem, absolutely.
Okay.
So a common one that'll happen is you'll get somebody and you'll talk with them and they'll have the problem and they're not sure what it is. Well, why do you think they're not sure what the problem is?
It was a block.
The block or their representation of the problem isn't well enough defined. For example, if they got more and more distinctions, they were more proficient at one of these areas, then they would have a better understanding of what the block is. They'd have a better understanding of what the options are for them in getting around the block.
So you could potentially ask the questions across modalities too, right? What does that feel like to you? What does that sound like to you? What does that look like to you?
Mm-hmm. Then the trouble is that they don't know. They have no idea what it feels like because they can't get in that modality.
Right. But there should be one that would be a little bit stronger than the rest of them. So then you want to focus on that modality in maybe trying to go deeper in understanding what the block is.
Yeah. And so what you could do then is use synesthesia. So say they're super good at visual, like Valerie is, and then we have them go and see the lips moving. And then they have the ability to then get into the voice and what the voice sounds like. Right. Or if it was auditory, what you do is you'd have them hear the voices, have them go closer and put their hand maybe on their back and feel the vibrations coming from the voices. And then sharpen up that kinesthetic feeling.
Right.
But anywhere all along the line, as long as you have communication with the person in a specific modality, you can advance and you can increase the other ability in the different modalities.
Cool.
Makes sense? Any thoughts, questions on that? Barb, where'd Steven go? We want him back so we can have him for practice.
He's right here. He needed just to get up and stretch his leg for a second.
Okay, fair enough.
He's coming back.
Jude, we got you for a few more minutes. Can we get you and Steven to go?
Yeah, sure. Can you, do you need me to take glasses off? Can you see?
I think we can see. But if you want to take your glasses off, you definitely can. We'll just get closer.
Because then I can't see anybody's faces and I'll just be talking.
Yeah.
I'm a little animated, so.
We'll have you be spotlighted anyways. All right, Steven, whenever you're ready, just go through any of the modalities that you want. If you can make key distinctions, say, for example, comparing a visually created compared to visually reconstructed, that'll probably be hugely helpful. And then just map it however you will. And
so, Jude, you're kind of new to me. I don't know that much about you. I think you live in Denver. Is that right?
Yes.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up outside of Chicago, the western suburbs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm from outside of Minneapolis.
Okay. Been there.
Midwesterners, yeah. You remember what winters are like there, huh?
Oh, I've forgotten by now, so that's the good thing. Since I've been
that's why you're in Colorado, because you remember what they're like there. But
exactly, and I moved 500 miles away from my family.
Yeah. Okay, that information was too readily available. Your eyes didn't really move.
Okay.
I'll bet, though, you enjoyed those winters when you were growing up as a kid, probably, huh? Just playing in the snow, making a snowman, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we used to dig. So when we grew up in the Midwest, and probably when you did too, we had so much snow that it would snow and snow, and then it would stay. It wasn't like this melting thing. And so it'd snow and snow. We'd dig tunnels in the snow, and then it would become all icy and then black and nasty, and then it'd snow on it again. So that was
little snow caves. Yeah.
Right. One of our favorite things definitely to do.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that your eyes aren't making very big movements because I'm not seeing much. Is that what you're seeing, Sean?
Yeah.
So I've got to do better then.
Keep it simple.
Simple? Really?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to go the other way. Try to make them work for it and see if that helped.
Well, if you can find a baseline, you want to find that. But your questioning, it's hard to directly detect where he's going to go with his eyes.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because he could have gone with any modality on those.
Okay. Do you remember a day or just in general growing up as a young kid, going out and playing in the snow for hours and hours?
Do I remember a day?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember lots of days. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What was that like?
Favorite things. I mean, I loved it. It was so cold, but I grew up cold all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, we just bundled up and just went out and
Yeah.
played and came in and warmed up and then went out and played again. So
Yeah.
it was fun. Those are good memories. That's one of the drawbacks to not having as much snow out here is you just get the limited time to do that.
That's true. But I enjoy it all that much more, that limited time. But one of my favorite memories is just like exactly like you say, going out with friends and playing in the snow for hours and then coming back and having some nice warm hot cocoa. Maybe there was a fire in the fireplace. Was that what it was like for you also?
Yeah. So my dad and the neighbor would build a ice rink in an empty lot in between our houses.
Oh, nice.
And so that's why I ended up playing hockey for 17 years. But, that's what we started doing, like from the time I could walk, was being out on that rink. And my first hockey stick was a little pink hockey stick with a yellow puck. So that's like one of the fondest memories of winters growing up.
Yeah, I remember ice skating too. I can still hear, the sound of the blades on the ice and the puck being shot. And can you remember that also?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the smell of the ice is the funny one, and it's funny because I don't know if you ever seen. There's a movie, I can't remember the name of it, but he talks about the smell of the ice, and it's something that I don't think anybody other than people, ice figure skaters or hockey players, that spend a lot of time, and there's like a distinct smell to the ice, and so that's something that I recall also.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't remember that particular experience.
Yeah. Well, you probably didn't have your face smashed into the ice quite as often as I did either. So, probably part of the reason.
I was more just a skater, not not
Yeah.
a hockey player. So yeah, I guess not.
Right.
So you had like kids from the neighborhood and formed teams, that sort of thing?
Yeah, just be out there tooling around and until it was dark, until we had to come inside, and then be back the next morning. I remember taking my shoes or my skates off, and socks would just be soaked, and feet frozen, and just frozen to the core. Which, thinking back, like maybe my parents should have been paying a little more attention to like being almost frostbitten. But I think now about having my daughters and the condition I was in, and if they were in that condition coming in, I'd be like, okay, a little bit too much.
Yeah. Do you still keep in touch with any of those friends that you used to play hockey with as a kid?
Yeah, a few of them. Yeah,
a
few that we grew up with. So it's it's totally different now because we're all fathers, and some of them are still could we say holding on to or living still their glory through their children.
Yeah.
And,
so it's probably pretty easy for you.
It's kind of interesting, to watch the different ones and what their families are into, and the ones that are still into it. And
yeah. Holding on to those traditions. I'll bet you can probably even still hear their voices, can't you?
Sometimes. What was interesting was just this week, my daughter's is starting a hockey in her in gym class, and she was talking to me about a lot of this stuff. So it was really interesting and fascinating, because I was talking to her just about like some of the celebration dances we do after we scored goals. And then we went back and visited a friend of mine in February, and he and I played together probably closer to the end of our careers in our late teens. And he started talking, him and his son started talking about a whole lot of things. And so then we had to like give real specific details to them about kind of how, well, not real specific details, because that would not be appropriate for little children, but just about how we played and some of the things we did. And so it was interesting because they were fascinated, because they just know me as dad. So they were fascinated to know that I was the one that was like fighter and the one that was always causing problems and trouble. And my friend Brian was like the real pretty boy that scored all the goals and got all the girls and was all. So we had a little banter back and forth about that, and it was kind of fun and interesting. But now they're always like, "You really did that, Daddy? You like beat people up?" I'm like, "Yeah, I beat people up. I wasn't right. I don't want you beating anybody up, but." So
your victory dance, is that what you called it?
yeah, after we scored a goal, like our celebration dance. You know how they do the touchdown dances, like
Did you have like certain things that you would say in conjunction with that or anything?
No, other than like yay. Yeah.
It was mostly just the dance. You can still see yourself doing that dance.
Yeah. Or if it were in my case, it would be like going by the other team's bench and talking a bunch of snot. Always looking for an opportunity to do that.
Gotcha.
Oh shit.
John's relocating.
Yeah, we had a power outage here, so I had to find a new place temporarily.
Is the lava getting too close or something?
Yeah, if it wasn't so far away. Did you get him? You get him to? It looks to me like he went auditory, right?
Yeah, he did a lot of.
I had to work at it, and I was trying to get him to auditory digital, and he got himself there, and I can't remember what he was saying. That's where I was going to try to go. But when I did try to get him to go there, asking him about the victory dance and if they said anything in particular, that question didn't work. But he had gone there already.
We got him to go kinesthetic too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not as much though.
Yeah.
What do you notice specifically about him after seeing all the different IQs?
One is that his eye movements are not nearly as pronounced as some people's. And
did you find that? Did you guys notice that as well?
No, to me it seemed like there was information that was readily available. He was just pretty much straightforward. But then when he had to remember something, he really went way up left, and he really went real left and auditory, so auditory reconstructed, especially when he was talking about his daughter just starting hockey in gym class. And then, I mean, even when he was just telling us she just started hockey in gym class, he was so auditory remembered. It was like crazy. Like, okay, he must be hearing the conversation with his daughter about that, and that's why he was so far over. So that's what I noticed. I didn't really notice the kinesthetic. I was trying to kind of notice, because Jude, when you would look down, sometimes you would look down, but I couldn't tell which way your eyes were going, or if they were just looking straight down.
Well, I think part of it was he was moving his head down, I think, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So it's harder to see his eyes,
But that could be a strategy for him to access into that too.
Mm-hmm.
If you go and like really try to get it sometimes. Jude, can you imagine, for instance, a really deep feeling you've had in the last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, you notice it. You don't notice quite as much, right? Like from the auditory, it was like, or the visual was like that, but it was just subtle in that. Did you guys notice that when he just did that?
Yeah.
Okay. What I wonder is what other conclusions can we gain from that? The fact that he can go so far visually, so far auditory, but doesn't seem to go as far kinesthetically. And remember that we use these eyes to access the information. And so when we're going to access the information and we go like this, it's a lot of effort that's expended to get that information. But also what I think it might be is that we have a lot of range as well. Where if somebody can't go that far with their eyes, they don't have enough range to store that information. It's kind of what I'm leaning towards. What do you guys think?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by range.
Well, for example, let's say that you don't really find a use for auditory words. You don't really use the modality a whole lot. You don't store a whole lot of modality or auditory phrases. Then just having a little bit of range in auditory is useful compared to having a whole lot of stuff to remember there. It's kind of what I'm thinking along the lines of, where part of it's having to reach for the information and really go for it. The other part's having that information available somewhere in there to store it. I'm not necessarily sure on that. I'm just kind of speculating. For instance, if I have somebody that I'm working with, I usually will see them as a skillful person with their modalities if they can go visual, auditory, and they get it quick. And they can go everywhere, and they do it quick, and then they're there. They have the information, it's quick. So for instance, I ask you, what color is your friend's old house that you used to play in, and you get it really quick. That's a skill that I see in getting that information. Whereas you're searching and you're looking and you're I don't know where it is. It's a lack of skill in it. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
What do you mean by a lack of skill in it? Because isn't it just automatic?
Well, you have a piece of information there in your brain, right? And if you're struggling and fighting to get it compared to if you get it really quick and easy, same piece of information comparatively, if the person who gets it really quick and it has more skill in it.
But doesn't it depend upon what the information is? Because not all information is going to necessarily be the red car is going to be more than the feelings that you had when your parents divorced.
Exactly. And there'll be blocks and there'll be
I would expect, and there could be more, but I would expect somebody for one of them to maybe go quick on the red car, but if they're really trying to access or a feeling or what it was like or what their family life looked like when their parents were getting a divorce, that they might spend a greater amount of time accessing the information than they would with the other question. So does it have to, so my question being is, does it have to do with skill or does it have to do with the questioning or with the question?
A little bit of both. My whole kind of direction in that is that if you keep asking these person questions and you keep seeing that they rally off the answers to you really quick, then they're going to have a little bit more skill compared to somebody else. But if you keep asking them stuck questions and try to infer that they don't have any skill, then that might not be the case. So for instance, if I'm working with Steven and I ask him this question and he has a ready answer for me, and then this question, which is totally different and maybe a little bit harder for somebody to find generally, and he rallies off the answer to me. And I just keep asking these questions and he looks for them and he finds them and he brings them to me. Compared to somebody who looks for it visually, looks for it kinesthetically, looks for it all over the place, and they don't have it, then I'm going to say that generally they're going to have a little bit more skill, but it's got to be taken over the body of work because it might be a stuck question or something that I can't find. But for instance, if I have somebody there in front of me and they're looking for the answer, they look quickly visually, they look quickly auditory, they look quickly kinesthetically, and they're like, I don't have the answer.
Interesting. I'm going to have to pay a little more attention to this when I'm talking with people, because I will sometimes find that there are people that are very deliberate in how they answer, and when people that I find are very deliberate in how they answer, they will spend a greater amount of time in accessing all of it in a general place, and it seems to be like a trait. And so maybe, I mean, well, I don't know, but
Jude, that makes a lot of sense to me, because I think I'm one of those people that's going to think a lot about, I mean, you can ask me a question and I can have the answer very quickly, but how I present that answer to you, I'm going to put a lot more thought into.
Well, and so then Sean, wouldn't that be contrary to what you said then? If they're skillful in, being, or maybe that's not skillful. If they're more thoughtful in their question answering, are they potentially more skillful in accessing that question, that information, or?
Well, and I think
not?
of skillful in this is just being able to find the answer that you're looking for. And so, for instance, having a skill in this is going to be able to look at all the information possible in all the places possible. Potentially that's a skill. If I can look kinesthetically, if I can look auditory, compared to if I can just look visually, that's a skill. And then you can say, well, it's a skill to be able to look quickly and gain that information. And then you could also say it's another skill if you're able to find that information and then communicate it effectively.
Okay.
Is what I'm thinking there.
So this happens to me fairly often. Somebody will be describing something to me, and I get what they're saying, but for me, I need to understand it at a deeper level. And what I often get back from people, so what's going on in my head is I'm thinking about it, trying to put it in my own words, trying to conceptualize it to make sure that I really get it. What they see as me thinking, they often interpret that as I don't understand, when in fact the opposite is I do understand, and I'm trying to understand it much more deeply than it's been presented to me. And so they then try to re-explain themselves at some very superficial level. So that's just one example. But my question would be, you said skill is being able to come up with the answer quickly. How do you know when they have the answer? Because, sort of an extension of my example is I may have figured it out very quickly what my answer is, but then I think about how exactly I'm going to present that answer. And that can take some time depending upon, what the situation is, who the person is, what point I want to make, etc.
And my assertion of skill is really all subjective. So for example, I asked Barb what the color of her old car was. For instance, a lack of skills not going to be able to find it. Or a lack of skills going to be able to search for it for 5 minutes and then find it. Comparative, if you have a skill in that, you're going to be able to find it within 5 seconds. Or if you have another way that you could label the skills, knowing exactly what shade it was, seeing the whole car in front of you, and being able to have clear access to that representation.
Because the underlying assumption is that our brain is essentially a video recorder and it's all there somewhere. And
Exactly.
the skill is just in being able to
make
access
a fully formed representation of it. Okay. Because you had a representation of it one time, but it was distorted, it was deleted, it was generalized. How skillful are you at bringing that how skillful are you at bringing that representation back? Some people are going to be more skilled visually, some people are going to be more skilled auditory, and all across the board. But are you able to do it quickly? Are you able to do it, taking some time? It just kind of all depends, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I ask you to go ahead and remember your old car, you may be able to bring it up really quick, but if you take more and more time and really get in touch with it, you might be able to get even more of a better visual representation of it.
Right. The inside as well as the outside, for example.
Jude, you had something?
So here's an interesting one. I was watching a Q&A with a guy this week, and he would take the question and he would close his eyes.
I do that a lot.
And I do that sometimes too, but it was really noticeable with him because he did it every time. So he would stop, he would close his eyes, he would reflect on it, and then he would open them and then answer the question. And it wasn't in a session, it was just a Q&A thing.
Okay. What was the conclusion for you?
Well, my conclusion is that he was accessing information and being thoughtful about and deliberate about what he wanted to say. But it was interesting because you couldn't tell where he was going or what he was doing because his eyes were closed, and he would open them and then look directly into the camera and talk.
Okay.
And then when he was talking, then he was started to do, some of the eyes a little bit.
Why do you think it would be useful for us to do that when we're answering a question or taking in information?
Well, I know when I do it, it's in order to just to actually feel the question. Like if I'm listening to something, if I'm listening to, I won't usually do it in conversation. Like you're looking at me and I close my eyes while you're talking to me because that's weird. But I'll sometimes do it if somebody says something to me and it's somebody I'm comfortable with and I'm going to give an answer. I'll close my eyes and then say something. And for me, it's just to be thoughtful and deliberate. So that's why I assumed he was being thoughtful and deliberate because that's what I do. That's what I think, or that's what I'm doing when I do. So I don't know. I don't know why he was doing it, but
what do you guys
that's
think?
why I bring it up.
Other answers? Why would it be useful for us to close our eyes when we're answering questions or taking information in?
Everybody disappeared except for Jude.
Uh-oh.
We're still here.
I'm sure you are. There's only a
just
picture
can't
of Jude so far.
And I can't see anybody.
Huh. So I can answer that for myself. And I'm really curious if everybody answered that for themselves, would they all be the same answers roughly, or would they be vastly different? But for me, I think you're mostly right there, Jude, in the sense of being really thoughtful. I often close my eyes to be able to focus without distraction. So as I was thinking about what I focus on exactly while I was listening to you talk, I realized that I don't always just focus on a picture. Sometimes I'm focusing on the words and the logic and the concept. For me, I think it's to really be thoughtful and get rid of all distractions and focus. But I realized it could be either creating a picture or remembering a picture. It could be creating words or remembering words, basically. But I think you're right. I think it's about, for me anyway, being thoughtful.
Can you guys see the screen I've drawn here? Go ahead, Valerie.
Oh, for me, I think it's those things as well. But also, like if it's not a short answer, sometimes I feel like the way that somebody reacts could influence the way that I formulate my answer. So closing my eyes feels a little bit more authentic because I'm no longer interacting with, like in that moment, I'm not interacting with the person.
You guys can see my screen, right?
You're just interacting with your true feelings.
Yeah, like I'm uninfluenced by somebody looking surprised or flinching or looking excited, like encouraging me to share something, in some specific way. So it's about focusing, but it's also about blocking out not just the distraction, but the influence of the actual interaction of the conversation.
You guys can see my drawing, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
This is the old one that I had with you guys. I think I used to draw it a little bit better on the chalkboard.
You guys, I'm sorry, but I got to run.
Sure.
Take care. Appreciate it. Hey, I do want to say before I leave, I really appreciate this every week, Sean, and I appreciate everybody doing this and being open. And, this is so unbelievably just awesome in what we're learning and what we're sharing. And so I appreciate all of you for being involved in this.
And Jude, that's exactly what I was going to say to you. So thank you for participating in this because it is really good and helpful.
Thanks. All right. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, Jude.
Thanks. You
See
too.
ya.
So this goes, my question is essentially the NLP question. Why is it beneficial for us to close our eyes when we're taking in information or when we're answering a question. And so it's exactly this, where we have so many different levels of representations, we cut one off. Because if you remember, we're always having two levels of experience. We're seeing this outside world, and we're having visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. We're having those transmuted to our brain all through distortions, generalizations, and deletions. So we're having our world then go and map to our minds, right? And then we're also using our minds and pulling it back to the world. So say, for instance, somebody asks a question. If we shut off all of these, then we just have these. And so then it becomes more beneficial for us to shut off the information, to focus on the information we're being given, and to find the information that we need to get to answer the question. Does that make sense in a more NLP answer?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I'm just trying to make it make sense at a deeper level so I remember it better.
Because if I shut out my whole world, then I can access just my brain, just what I have in my experience, just what that person just said. I can focus on that. And I don't have to be seeing something. I don't have to be hearing something, seeing somebody else.
You know, and so this is interesting for me, because as we're talking about this, I'm realizing I don't really ever like close my eyes when I'm taking in information, or before. I might look off to the side, like to look away from the person I'm talking to. But I really don't ever close my eyes. Unless it's something like really, like maybe I'm feeling really stressful about something, then I might just go like that. But in like,
what's the purpose of you looking off to the side?
It's the same thing. I think it's the same thing, but it's just realizing that I don't actually close my eyes. I just will look off. And I'm just wondering if and sometimes when I divert my vision off to the side, I still feel like I can't really grasp what the person's saying to me, and I don't feel like my answer is my best answer. So I am going to actually try closing my eyes and seeing if I feel like I get a different response out of myself, if I can get a better answer for my,
That's a great idea. In the same way you forced your eyes down to go kinesthetic when you couldn't bring it up naturally.
I tell you, you make it a conscious process where you force your eyes to go different places, and sometimes it's hard. Like for me, it's really hard to go auditory. But you keep doing it, you get better at it. What I wonder, Barb, if you're ever in a car, if you ever go down and to your right, do you ever lean to your right when you're driving?
Not that I can think of.
I would expect that. Do you ever lean to your left?
I don't think so.
I wonder if Steven does.
Yes, he does.
Let's test. Valerie, you want to work with Steven?
Sure.
And just try to identify some modalities, some questions that would elicit modalities, and see where his eyes go. And I'll tell you why that we're looking auditory digital for him later. Let me spotlight you.
You know all my secrets.
Okay.
So tell me about your weekend.
Oh gosh, this is a bad weekend to use as an example because we did almost nothing.
How do you know it's bad? How is it bad?
Because there's not much to talk about.
So what does not doing much look like for you?
Well, what a weekend normally looks like is pretty busy until Sunday afternoon, and then there's a few hours off until we have this session.
So what made this weekend different?
We did, well, I don't think we even left the house. we did almost nothing. We didn't do any work around the house. We didn't do any work in the yard. We didn't go shopping. We didn't.
So what did you do?
Read and took naps.
How'd your nap feel?
Everybody. Yeah, that was nice. Just feeling like it was okay.
You know, I love to take naps outside. Have you ever done that?
No, I don't think I have.
Why not?
So normally, if I'm outside, I'm going to enjoy that, I think.
Can you imagine what it would be like to take a nap outside?
Actually, I'm remembering this summer, Barbara and I did some camping in some national parks. Mm-hmm. And I think we did actually take some naps in the afternoon. Well, I don't know. Does inside the tent count as outside when you're camping? I guess it depends on your definition.
Did it, did you smell the pine trees?
Yes. Yeah.
And what did that remind you of?
Lots of things. Probably more than anything, survival training. Which is odd because I've spent a lot of time camping and being in the woods through my entire life. So it's a bit odd that that smell brings, I mean, I know why, but it's a bit odd that it brings back strong memories of survival training.
Right. So what were you surviving?
What was I surviving? Air Force training. Simulated your plane crashed behind enemy lines and you've got to survive and and you know, find food to eat, not get
It's one of the first things they teach you in survival training. I've never been myself. Like what's the first lesson? You know, like what's the first thing they teach you?
Oh, the first things are like first aid and what to eat and what not to eat and those sorts of things, just basic survival.
What are you not supposed to eat? I'm curious.
I focused more on what you could eat.
Okay.
Couldn't remember. There was just so much information. I couldn't remember everything. So,
what was your instructor's name?
No idea.
Remember anybody else? Did you go through survivor training by yourself?
No, it's in a large class.
Yeah. So who was the best student?
I'm not sure that you could actually give that designation. There was a guy from South Africa with us, and he memorized everything.
Oh, that doesn't really count, does it?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
He knew all the answers. I'm not sure he could apply it though. There were a lot of people that knew some of the answers, really good at applying the few things that they knew. That might have been their strategy. I was probably average.
You were average at surviving?
Probably. Something you want to excel at, isn't it? It was a learning experience. I think everybody got better and ended up being a lot better than they were.
What did you learn?
Oh gosh, so much. The prisoner of war camp training is probably where you learn the most about yourself.
That sounds exciting. What did you learn about yourself?
That I was very creative and clever and sneaky.
Really? You didn't know that about yourself before the prisoner of war training? That was like a revelation?
Not in the same way, no.
Now, is that something that your instructor told you or your peers told you? Did you get a lot of feedback that you were clever and creative?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. We would have debriefs after the whole thing was over.
Oh, so what did they say in the debrief? What kind of things did they say about you?
Well, you remember that thing that you did, you should never do that. And, that sort of thing. And,
Okay.
what did you do in this situation? Oh, well, I remember that I was told I should do this. And so here's how I did that. And they're like, oh, that was really good. I haven't heard that one before. And, those
How
sorts
did you feel during the debrief? Getting that kind of feedback. Like, did you want to hit anyone?
Good. Well, I'll tell you, after the prisoner of war training, which was, they did this time dilation thing that I still have no idea how many days it was. But there were obviously U.S. Air Force enlisted personnel that were simulating the enemy that had captured us, and they put us through all sorts of stuff. And when it was all over, I remember getting on the Air Force bus to go back to the Air Force base, and there they were in their Air Force uniforms sitting on the same bus. And I remember
Bastards.
very clearly thinking, as I got on the bus and I saw them, I remember thinking, I know you're on my side. I know you were just doing your job, but man, do I hate you. So I guess that means they did a good job at what they were supposed to be doing.
Were you ever on that side? Were you ever asked to be the enemy in a simulation?
In flying simulations, like a red flag kind of thing, yes, not in that situation.
How did it feel to play the enemy?
It felt like it played to some of my strengths of being very creative and clever.
Did it feel powerful?
Yeah, it kind of did, actually.
Okay.
You're very good at this, Valerie, but I know I've told you that before.
She's getting better and better at mapping. What do we know about Steven after looking at his IQs? Or what can we guess?
Yeah, he's very visual. And
Steven,
even when, go ahead.
Would you agree, Steven?
It was interesting. One of the reasons that I said that Valerie was so good was that she had me I was moving so quickly, I was having a hard time paying attention to myself and paying attention to the questions. So I was just focused on the questions.
Which is good, yeah.
Yeah. And so the little that I was observing of myself, it was exactly like Barb was saying. I just was, just my head would probably tilt back a little bit. My eyes would go up. I don't think I closed my eyes at all, but yeah, did I? Yeah. But it was primarily, the only thing I noticed about myself was visual.
Which is wild. Go ahead, Valerie.
I didn't get any analog digital, any of the auditory digital stuff. I didn't notice any of that. I don't know that I tried to elicit it, but I probably could have with that really good prisoner of war survival thing. That was rich.
Can you recite the Pledge
was
of Allegiance?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you recite the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, absolutely.
Do it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, blah, blah, blah.
That's usually what they use to get auditory digital, but
yeah.
when I saw him go to auditory digital, it was really quick. Really quick.
Do you remember when it was?
I don't remember when it was, but I know that at the times that I saw it, it was just quick. And what's interesting about that is Steven sent me a questionnaire like maybe 2 months ago where it says that his lead system is auditory digital. And
well, I'm sorry, go on.
I don't know that I'd believe it.
So, so we took that test, Barb and I both did, as part of that certification. Thank you. And
Barb, come back to us.
Yeah, sorry.
Move the computer. There we go.
So, and we had to write up a lot of this stuff. And my write-up said that their questionnaire did not represent what it claims it represents. In other words, it's back to that delineation I was making a little while ago. In other words, how I take something in and represent it to myself and use it to recall information is completely separate from how I reflect it then back out to the world. And the questions that that questionnaire asked were basically about how I reflect information back out to the world.
Okay,
But
wow.
that was my assertion, and they never even, I kind of halfway expected a phone call from them saying, can you tell me more about this? Because that's what I wrote up. And I said, your questionnaire does not reflect what you think it does. And that's
they don't know what questions to ask you, Stephen. They're like, well, putting that aside. Yeah, let's just pass him for now.
Well, the interesting thing on that test is I also came out as auditory digital.
And so did you, Sean. Didn't
Oh,
you?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it's like, how much stock do you want to put in it?
Yeah.
So I developed a theory as to what that questionnaire actually reflected, and that was really more. Well, let me go deeper into it. So the surface level is those questions actually gave you information about how people reflect what they, what's going on in their brain back out to the world, as opposed to how they bring it in and represent it to themselves and access it. And so the deeper level of that is, my theory is that the more experienced, sophisticated, thoughtful, mindful you are about your communication, the more you're going on that particular questionnaire anyway, the stronger you're going to score in the auditory digital, because you take it in however you take it in, you recall it however you recall it, but then you think and you reflect it back in a very thoughtful way, paying close attention to the words that you're using.
And I'd say that there's an added level of distortion, deletion, and generalization. Because if you look at it as a process, you read
in the questionnaire, or in what I just said?
The questionnaire. So for example, you read the thing and it says to go access visual information. And you do it, you'll go and you'll look at the visual information in your eyes, and then you have to take your pen and you have to put the visual information down.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So for instance, it's the same thing if I go ahead and I ask you the question and I look at the content of your words compared to your eyes. Because your eyes are communicating to me a process that you're going through, and you're not going to be able to generalize, delete, or distort that process. But what you are going to be able to generalize, delete, and distort is the words that you tell me, the words that you write to me.
Right.
And just the way that I'm looking at it, because if you have the process and then you have one more level of it, and I imagine you're good at that because you've had that kind of training and you've dealt with that kind of work environment where you've had to formulate or break down information for people over and over again, right? Where you were given information and you had to shape it or communicate it into a way that was different or maybe more beneficial, or just somehow you had to go ahead and put the deletions, distortions, generalizations in a way that benefited you somehow. And I think that's auditory digital, and doing that the skill is.
I think that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So Stephen's visual.
I think I was almost exclusively visual, I think, wasn't I? Just kind of remember the feelings of what my body was doing, but not paying real close attention.
I thought we got some auditory.
Did I?
Yeah, talking about the debrief stuff and what they say to you, and did you want to hit anyone? We got some kinesthetic.
Okay. Really? My eyes went down for kinesthetic?
I thought I saw.
I might have. Did you see it?
I didn't. That was the one part that I was having trouble seeing, if his eyes went down and to the right. And that's what I was wondering, Valerie, if you saw it. because I'm like just sitting here looking at him at the screen, and so.
So go down and to the right, Steve.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
that
thought I
tough?
did.
Okay.
Is that tough for you,
Not
Steve?
much, but
I don't think so.
Comparative
But
to up. Does it feel weird or awkward compared to going up?
a little bit. It feels less familiar.
Yeah, Valerie, I really wanted to whisper in your ear to ask him about eating the eyeball of a rabbit and what that felt like. Because that was
I tried to say what we're allowed to eat and not eat. And if I'm ever in a survival situation and I starve, I'm pinning it on you. Did you eat the eyeball of a rabbit?
I'd eat it. I'd go for it.
Did you?
It's not very satisfying, but
The least furry bit, huh?
yeah, really. But I would have to say though that kinesthetically speaking, my memory of getting on that bus after the prisoner of war segment of the training and seeing those guys and just having to literally tell myself that I shouldn't hate them. They were just doing their job, but I still hated them. Is probably a stronger memory even than the rabbit eyeball.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of a potential kinesthetic response, that was probably a better example.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like facing your enemy, right?
Yeah. And it's very realistic prisoner of war training that was modeled after what the U.S. prisoners of war went through in the Vietnamese War. So
sounds like a resume builder. If the business deal goes south, I'll be fine.
Yeah. It's an interesting perspective. I never thought of that.
Which kind of leads me to where I started with that, going with you, Stephen. If you drive and you lean over to the left, maybe like hands on the window, and you're just kind of leaning, it's more towards auditory digital.
Do I lean? Which way do I lean?
I think you actually. I've noticed you lean right, but I don't know if that's just because you usually have your phone on the holder on the windshield.
On the right side.
On the right side.
Or there's that nice armrest on the right side.
Right.
Yeah, I can see myself leaning, and I think I would primarily lean to the right, but I'm not sure that that's related to anything other than that's where the armrest is.
It'll be the case where you're more able to go into your kinesthetic feelings if you are doing that.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
But I do know that when I drive and you're the passenger, you lean left a lot.
I just like to be close to you.
It could be that. It could be the armrest is there. I don't know. But you do. You lean left a lot.
Also notice that when people are moving their heads, they'll go and try to find them. I know I feel most comfortable when my head's off like this a little bit. And that's because kinesthetics my lead system. So I'll feel really good if I'm just like this a little bit. So I find myself, if I'm on the couch at home, I'll just be leaned over a little bit like this. I'll feel more comfortable.
Well, that's interesting. I clearly need to practice more than Sean, because I have never noticed that your lead system is kinesthetic.
Really?
I see you going visual, really strongly visual up. Like, dang, I can only see the whites of his eyes. It's so...
You know why I think that is, and kind of what I've learned on this training too, is that it's not because I'm good visual that I'm always up here. It's because I struggle to go visual, and then I do it because I know the information's there. Because if I was like Barb and I just quick and I got the information, I think it means that I'm more skillful there. But if I'm like this, I think, yeah, the information's there, and I have a certain amount of skill because I can ultimately find it. But I think my real skill is, okay, that's the feeling. Okay, I have it. Now I'm talking with you. Yeah, it feels good. Okay, cool. So I don't know. My thoughts are, and this could be wrong, I'm not sure, but my thoughts are is if you're going like this and you're struggling to find it, it might be a sign of not having a skill or having to stretch for that visual knowledge, that kinesthetic knowledge, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then maybe a more skillful person just a habit. And I was watching Stephen as he did that, and it looked skillful compared to my.
Okay.
But to say that, I've also noticed that I've increased my visual capabilities. Whereas when I first learned NLP, I was like really, really kinesthetic. I thought that I was visual, and there was no way. But if you had asked me to like imagine like a purple bunny rabbit, it might be difficult for me. But now I just did that, and I was doing it while I was talking with you, and I could do it fairly easy.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, there's still so many levels to it, because sure, you can imagine the purple bunny rabbit, but can you imagine the little textures of it? Can you imagine the little shape around its nose? Can you imagine its little eyes? And maybe you might be really proficient at feeling it, but you might not be able to see around it. So there's just so many different levels you can go. And the skill really is just subjective in it. Next time you guys have John, observe what he does. I would say that his skill lies in searching the different modalities. And
I love having John in our classes because he is so different, at least from me, that I really value the inputs that he gives because it helps me see things so very differently.
Absolutely. And he's a really pronounced example of how often he goes to different modalities. He's just all over the place. I'm sure you guys can remember that.
One of the things that I observe about him that's just it's just so fascinating is observing himself.
Yeah.
Like he will, like if we're sitting by the table next to the whiteboard there, we still meet in room A1 most of the time. I'll ask him a question and he wants to give me an answer. And I see him, he starts leaning towards the whiteboard because he wants to grab a marker and he wants to start writing, or he'll start looking at the paper and the pen because he sees himself wanting to do that. And he's like, I don't know why I want to draw the answer out, but it's just fascinating. It's fascinating to watch him and to watch him watching himself.
Any other thoughts before we log off?
This was cool.
Yeah,
It was.
Okay. I think it's a very great place for people to work on and become more and more proficient at it. And it's cool to me how like deep ingrained it can be, where you're leaning to the right, you're leaning to the left, you're up here, and you can notice something so quickly about somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people are going to be in this training that I'm going to go to this week, but I'm kind of hoping that it'll be small. I think it might be. Mm-hmm. And I really want to see if I can kind of read the landscape for everybody and see as they learn and process information where their eyes are going. And
what a great opportunity to practice if you can be that disciplined. I would think you would have to kind of really focus to be able to try to learn the material at the same time you're paying attention to other people and seeing how they're learning.
I'm really hopeful that I know the material. That might be a stretch. But I guess I'm thinking that because they're strangers, that there might be something that's easier about that because I don't ever interact with them otherwise. So it's not like I've got to manage a relationship or anything.
It's a work training?
Yeah, I'm going to get Kaizen certified.
Another way of thinking of that, and you mentioned where you don't have to like pay attention. One thing that you can do, and kind of for everybody here, is that you can have two levels to it, where you focus on surface level, focus on deep level. Many times people in conversations are always focused on surface level. in just about any conversation that I'm in, I'm on deep level where I'm not paying attention to a lot of words, but I'm paying more attention to their vocal variety, their facial expressions, where their eyes are going and all that. And I'm listening not to the content, but to the meanings and what's behind the content. So that's one way you guys can go about that skill.
Wow, what a phenomenal skill to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say it's best done practicing listening to women, at least in my experience. I don't want to make a large generality of it. I'm sure you could definitely do it with guys too, but that's kind of how I just learned it. Where if I had my mom in the room and she was talking and telling me all about her story, I would listen to the structure of the problem, the structure of what was going on, and then pay more attention to what was going on with her in my conscious awareness.
Wow, that seems like that would take a lot of practice.
It becomes more useful, and so success builds repetition.
Yeah.
So have a few successes in that, and it becomes intuitive, where you're just listening to not what they say, but what they actually mean.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
not what they say, but what they actually mean. That's quite the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give it a practice, and especially you, Valerie, if you're at that training and you got somebody who's just talking, what is it they actually mean instead of what they're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'll have to look into what that is.
Try to do a structural response instead of a content-based one.
Yeah. And I'm sure you have a really good grasp for what that is.
Sure.
Anything you guys would like to see in the coming weeks?
I don't know if this is enough for a whole class, but I would like to review the verbal predicates for language. I think they go really nicely with the IQs.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely need more practice with that as well.
Yeah.
What if we did like a practice with verbal predicates and hypnotic language?
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it though?
Yeah. Very good, Valerie.
Cool.
I would love to be fluent in the Milton model. I think that would just make my life so wonderful. Yeah. I don't know why, but when we learned about that, I was like, this is the missing secret sauce.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put together probably something like that. And then Barb, I'm thinking probably my mom will have you work with, but there could be another opportunity there. But I'll send you out an email, and then I'll see you all next week.
Sounds great.
And tell Becky to start showing up again on Thursdays.
Okay. And keep your guys' fingers crossed, as I've actually recently got a little bit of a desire to come back to America. I'm fighting it.
We're just getting used to you being gone. You got to stay now.
Okay. That's good, because that helps my fight with it. If there's nobody that wants me to come back, I can stay gone.
I'm sure your mom feels the same way. Stay there. Stay there.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for your time, Sean. It was great.
Good night, Valerie.
Take care. Good night.